you think you have a limit. As soon you touch this limit, something happens and you suddenly can go a little bit further.
Senna, he was spectacular every single time he got in a car.
He wanted to show the people that he was much better, and that was his weakness. Explosive speed, extraordinary skill, and an indomitable will to win. This is Ayrton Senna. He was not just a driver in F1 racing. He was a virtuoso of the asphalt, a poet of the pedals. He was in fact a legend. 3 World Championship titles, 41 Grand Prix victories, and 65 pole positions. This legend had set a record that was once unrivaled, unmatched and unparalleled in the world of F1 racing. No one tried harder or pushed him further, nor did anyone reveal so vividly the extremes to which only the greatest drivers could go. From his very first win at the Portuguese Grand Prix to his final victory at the Australian Grand Prix, Senna never stopped winning. Till date, he remains the only player to win the prestigious Monaco Grand Prix 6 times. But amidst the glorious peak of his career, tragedy struck, silencing the maestro in a sudden, heart-wrenching black weekend. What went wrong? His departure was not just the loss of a champion, but the end of an era. And since his beautiful journey in F1 racing was tragically cut short, where does he rank among the greatest in the game? Chapter 1. The origin of Ayrton Senna. Born into a wealthy Brazilian family where, alongside his brother and sister, he enjoyed a privileged upbringing, he never needed to race for money. His deep need for racing began with his underlying love for a miniature go-kart his father gave him at 4 years old. As a boy, the highlights of Ayrton's life were Grand Prix mornings when he woke up with the anticipation at the prospect of watching his Formula One heroes in action on television.
I think I was 9 years old, and I was racing that weekend. I just came in from a heat or practice session, and my dad's working away on the car, and I remember him telling me. I remember going around to the back of the car and just bawled my eyes out. At 9 years, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember exactly where it was.
Meanwhile, at 13, Senna raced a kart for the first time and immediately won. 8 years later, he ventured into single-seater racing in Britain, where he won 5 championships in 3 years. By then, he had divorced his young wife and forsaken a future in his father's businesses, choosing instead to pursue success in Formula One racing. Senna burst onto the Formula One scene in 1984, with Toleman marking the beginning of a legendary career. His debut at Monaco, a race he would later conquer 6 times, was unforgettable. However, it was about time he moved on from his team. Since Toleman's limited resources are inadequate for his massive ambitions, Senna bought out his contract and moved to Lotus in 1985. There he managed to win his first Portuguese Grand Prix competition. In the charismatic black and gold Lotus car, the Brazilian, aged just 25, was driving only his second Grand Prix in a competitive car. He'd had a breakthrough result the year before in Monaco, his first season in Formula One in driving rain. But this win was on an altogether different level. In 3 seasons with Lotus, he started from pole position 16 times and won 6 races.
It was very hard race, even more difficult than last year at Monaco, because the conditions were a lot worse than Monaco. I could not see anything in front of me. With the cars going in front, it was impossible to see anything, and you had to go by, because it was a big difference in the pace that I was going. So it was one of the biggest moments that I had in the race.
Realizing he had reached the limits with Lotus, Senna decided to join McLaren in 1988, where he spent 6 seasons, winning 35 races and 3 world championships. In the following years, the McLaren Honda dominated, winning 15 of the 16 races. Senna edged out his teammate Alain Prost with 8 wins to Prost's 7, grabbing his first driving title. This sparked one of Formula One's most infamous feuds. Meanwhile, some of his greatest performances came in his final year with McLaren, after which he moved to Williams for an ill-fated 1994 season. Chapter 2. Senna Personal Life. Beyond his abilities behind the wheel, Senna epitomized one of the sport's most captivating personalities. Despite his slim stature, he displayed a formidable physical presence. In fact, the media captured his commanding performances, and the world at large became captivated by his positive energy. But this is a different story when he's on the wheel. Senna drove like a man possessed, and his unyielding ambition drew criticism, notably from rivals like Prost, who accused him of prioritizing victory above everything else. But he was quite appreciated by a lot of rivals. In an interview, former Formula One driver from the United Kingdom, Martin Brundle, remarkably named Senna as the greatest of all time. Senna was a man driven by his heart. He had a God-given talent for grip and speed and understanding how a car works underneath him that I've rarely seen. For me, the greatest driver of all time was Ayrton Senna. Even Senna acknowledged his occasional ventures beyond reason. After qualifying for the 1988 Monaco Grand Prix, while already securing pole position, he pushed further, becoming more than 2 seconds faster than Prost in an identical McLaren.
That day, I suddenly realized that I was no longer driving it conscious, and I was in a different dimension for me. The circuit for me was a tunnel, which I was just going. And I realized I was well beyond my conscious understanding.
He was slightly aware of his mortality, using fear to temper the boundaries he felt, compelled to push. While racing, he believed in a mirrored life itself, a constant journey of self-discovery. However, his introspection didn't detract from his deep empathy for humanity. While he was alive, he fought with the world's injustices and helped many kids, generously donating millions of his personal fortune. For context, this was later estimated at $400 million at his death. In early 1994, while Senna was contemplating his future, he said, "I want to live fully, very intensely. I would never want to live partially, suffering from illness or injury. If I ever happen to have an accident that eventually costs my life, I hope it happens in one instant." And so it did. A few days later, while leading the race, his race car somehow veered off the Imola track, colliding with the concrete wall at Tamburello Corner. Millions watched the tragedy unfold on television, and they were bothered with one question: what happened to Ayrton Senna? Chapter 3. Senna's Tragic Death. May 1st, 1994, in what seemed like a usual race for Ayrton Senna. He headed out and prepared for his competition against one of the greatest F1 racers, Michael Schumacher, the speedster who dominated the start of the season with Benetton, winning the first 2 races. Meanwhile, for Ayrton Senna, luck was not on his side, as he struggled to score a single point. Qualifying sessions posed immediate challenges, and Senna started feeling the pressure to secure pole position. Suddenly, rookie Rubens Barrichello crashed at 225 kilometers per hour, a tragic accident that threatened his career. Barrichello lost consciousness and required emergency treatment after swallowing his tongue. And for Senna, it was a devastating moment because Barrichello had been a close friend since childhood. Miraculously, Barrichello regained consciousness with minor injuries, including a broken nose. Once assured of Barrichello's recovery, Senna returned to the track. Showing the best performance in qualifying felt more significant than a victory for Senna, who had clinched all his titles with McLaren. However, by 1994, Senna looked for a more competitive car to contest for the 4th championship. So he joined Williams, which had the top car, until FIA regulations came up. The decision was made to limit the technological advancements in the cars and to increase the spectacle of races. Senna, who was deeply concerned about these changes, predicted a season fraught with accidents, an ordinary concern that would soon prove tragically accurate. During the second qualifying session, Roland Ratzenberger aimed to surpass his teammates in only his second Formula One race. At 314 kilometers per hour, he lost control, crashing into a concrete wall. Earlier damage to his car's front wing had compromised its stability, leading to the fatal crash at Tamburello Turn. The scene was tense as Ratzenberger lay motionless while being visible to everyone. Senna, who was eager for details, used a safety car to reach the accident site, prompting criticism from management. Tragically, Ratzenberger died instantly, despite medical efforts. Instead of announcing the tragedy immediately, he was airlifted to the hospital due to the Italian legal requirements mandating event suspension in such cases. Now it was time for Senna to put up a show against his biggest rival, Michael Schumacher. He quickly signaled for the safety car to accelerate, sensing his tires cooling off. By lap 5, the safety car pulled off the track. Ayrton and Schumacher started a fierce duel, racing closely together. On lap 6, Michael intensified the pressure on Ayrton. At a massive speed of 307 kilometers per hour, the Brazilian slammed into a wall. Despite his attempts to brake sharply, the impact reduced his speed to 21 kilometers per hour. Paramedics arrived to find his pulse faint. It turned out that a piece of suspension pierced his helmet visor, causing a severe head injury and significant blood loss. The force of impact had also caused multiple skull fractures. Sadly, it was too late. Senna was airlifted to a hospital in Bologna, but his injuries were too severe. Formula One management knew the severity of what had happened, but kept the news from other drivers. Meanwhile, drops of blood from the helicopter shook journalists as the race at Imola pressed on. Despite 2 tragedies, the FIA continued without putting a stop to the competition. On lap 41, another horrific incident unfolded when Minardi's poorly secured rear wheel detached, injuring several in the pit lane. Schumacher maintained his lead with strategic pit stops and ultimately won the race. However, the podium lacked champagne as news of Senna's condition spread worldwide. The incident sent shockwaves through the entire racing world. The wreckage of the Williams and Simtek cars was already under Italian police protection for investigation. Inside Senna's cockpit, an Austrian flag awaited his planned tribute to Ratzenberger at the finish line. Following Senna's tragic death, Brazil was consumed by an outpouring of grief and sorrow. The Brazilian government declared 3 days of national mourning in honor of Ayrton Senna. However, race organizers delayed announcing the details of both Ratzenberger's and Senna's tragic accidents, likely for financial reasons. If the event was at any moment cancelled, it would mean millions in losses for Formula One, due to withdrawal in sponsorship deals, global broadcasts, and ticket sales. Do you consider this as disrespect to the Formula One legend? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments section. Also, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.